Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. We are very excited because the topic we chose is something that so many people around the world are interested in, and that is how to learn English more quickly, more naturally, and in a way that really fits into our busy lives. And in this episode, we are going to focus on one powerful tool that is completely free and available to almost anyone who has a phone, an internet connection, or even just a small device, and that tool is podcasts. Kasem, many learners feel stuck when they try to improve their English. They think they need expensive teachers or special courses, but the truth is that podcasts can open a door for everyone.
Exactly, Sarah. And the beauty of podcasts is that they feel like conversations. They are not heavy textbooks or boring grammar exercises. Instead, they bring you real voices, real emotions, and sometimes even humor. And what I love most is that you can listen almost anywhere, while walking to school, while cooking at home, even before you sleep in bed. That's why today, we want to share not only the reasons why podcasts are so effective for learning English, but also how to use them in a smart way so you can progress much faster than just sitting in a classroom.
Let's start with the big question, Kasem. Why do so many people feel that their English is not improving even after years of studying? I think one big reason is that many learners spend too much time only on reading and grammar, which are important, of course, but they don't practice listening to natural speech. They can read a textbook page, but when they meet a real English speaker, suddenly everything feels too fast, too difficult, and they lose confidence.
That's very true. Another reason is that in school, teachers often focus on exams and grades, so students memorize vocabulary for a test but then forget it later. The process becomes mechanical, not enjoyable. But language is not only about memory. It's about connection and communication. And when students don't feel that connection, they get bored, they lose motivation, and they stop believing they can ever speak fluently.
Yes, and the sad part is that many learners blame themselves. They say, maybe I'm not talented, or maybe I'm too old. But in reality, the problem is not them. The problem is the method. If you only study grammar rules without ever hearing how people actually use the language, then of course progress will feel slow. That's why we need a fresh approach, and podcasts are one of the best answers.
So let's explain why podcasts are so powerful for language learning. First, they expose you to authentic English, not the artificial sentences we often see in textbooks. For example, in a book, you might read, "This is a pen," which nobody says in real life. But in a podcast, you hear people talk the way they really do, with natural rhythm, expressions, and even slang.
Absolutely, and the variety is incredible. You can find podcasts on almost any topic: technology, health, cooking, travel, history, even funny stories. This means learners can choose topics they already love. And when you listen to something you enjoy, your brain pays more attention, and you remember more. It becomes fun instead of a duty.
Another important point is repetition. You can replay a podcast as many times as you like, unlike a real conversation where you cannot ask a stranger to repeat 20 times. With a podcast, if you don't understand, you can pause, rewind, or even slow down the speed. That level of control is very powerful for learners.
Now let's give practical advice. Many learners ask, which podcast should I start with? My advice is to begin with podcasts that are made for English learners. These are usually slower, clearer, and they explain new words. But once you feel comfortable, move to normal podcasts, the ones native speakers actually listen to. That step is important because it trains your ear to real English.
Yes, and I also recommend starting with short episodes, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, so you don't feel overwhelmed. Later, when you're used to it, you can go for 30 minutes or even 1 hour. It's like exercise. You don't run a marathon on your first day, you build stamina slowly.
And don't forget interest. If you love sports, choose a podcast about sports. If you like cooking, choose cooking. The more personal the topic is for you, the easier it becomes to stay consistent.
Sarah, I think one mistake learners make is that they only listen passively. They put on a podcast while doing something else, but they don't focus. Passive listening is good for getting used to the sound, but for real progress, you also need active listening. That means taking notes, repeating phrases aloud, and maybe even shadowing, where you try to speak at the same time as the podcast speaker.
Exactly. I always suggest learners to choose one episode they like and study it deeply. First listen just to enjoy, then listen again, and write down the main ideas. On the third time, pause and repeat after the speaker. This way you train listening, writing, and speaking all at once. One podcast can give you so much learning if you use it actively.
Another powerful advantage is vocabulary. When you hear new words inside a story or discussion, you remember them more easily than just reading a list. For example, if the podcast says, "I was so exhausted after running 5 kilometers," you not only learn the word exhausted, but you also feel the meaning. It's stronger than just reading, exhausted equals very tired.
That's right, and I encourage learners to keep a vocabulary journal. Every time you hear a useful word or expression, write it down with the sentence from the podcast. Then later in the day, try to use it in your own sentence. Within a few weeks, you'll be surprised at how many new words you can use naturally. To wrap up, if you feel that learning English is slow or boring, maybe it's time to try podcasts. They are free, flexible, and enjoyable. You can learn anywhere, anytime, and with any topic that interests you.
And the key is balance. Use both passive listening for exposure and active listening for deep practice. Take notes, repeat sentences, build vocabulary, and most importantly, enjoy the process.
That's right, and I encourage learners to keep a vocabulary journal. Every time you hear a useful word or expression, write it down with the sentence from the podcast. Then later in the day, try to use it in your own sentence. Within a few weeks, you'll be surprised at how many new words you can use naturally.